For nearly half my life, my sister Talia and I have been each other's closest confidants. Growing up, we shared a cramped bedroom in our parents' house. Two twin beds on opposite walls, parted by about 3 feet of aged carpet. We spent countless nights whispering secrets and inside jokes until we heard one of our parents' footsteps, prompting us to clam up and feign sleep. Nothing about Talia ever seemed sinister or untrustworthy. In fact, of all the people I've known, she was the one I assumed was incapable of genuine malice. She used to rescue stray cats from alleys, volunteer at the local shelter, and cry during sad movies. She was that kind of person, empathetic to a fault. That's why I can't reconcile what's happened with the sister I believed I knew. We drifted apart somewhat in our 20s, no drama, just different universities, different careers, different circles of friends. But we never lost that sibling bond. We still called each other on birthdays, swapped holiday visits, and kept each other in the loop about major life changes. Then about 4 months ago, Talia's lease ended abruptly, and her job situation got complicated. She texted me, asking if she could crash at my place for a while until she found something new. It wasn't even a question. I insisted she come by. I live alone, had an empty guest room, and was thrilled at the chance to reconnect with my sister in day-to-day life. The first 2 weeks were normal, almost nostalgic. We'd cook simple dinners together, watch random TV shows, debate silly topics like whether pineapple belongs on pizza. She'd keep me posted on her job applications. I teased her about how tidy she was, and she teased me about my music taste. Everything felt comfortable. Then, around the 3rd or 4th week, I started hearing Talia talk in her sleep. At first, it was so trivial I actually laughed it off. Through the thin wall between my bedroom and hers, I caught mumbles like, "No, not that color," or "Don't let the cat out." It reminded me of how we'd used to overhear each other's half-sleep giggles as kids. When I joked about it over breakfast, Talia admitted she'd been told before that she sometimes talked or even walked in her sleep. "It's harmless, I promise," she said, rolling her eyes. "I had a roommate once who freaked out because I'd pace the hall at 3 a.m. I never remember it." I assured her I found it more amusing than scary. She gave me a faint, hesitant smile, and we moved on. No big deal. But a few nights later, I was brushing my teeth in the hallway bathroom when Talia's voice cut through the apartment, low and urgent. "Don't let him see the blood." Every hair on my arm stood up. I paused, listening. Her door was ajar, the room dark except for the faint glow of her phone charging. She was definitely asleep. Her breathing had that slow rhythm. But the words didn't sound random. They were chillingly precise. I told myself it was an odd dream, maybe triggered by a horror movie she'd watched. I let it go for the night. But after that, I began noticing a pattern. Talia's midnight ramblings escalated in intensity, morphing from ambiguous lines. "Where's the shovel? It won't matter soon. Tell him to run," into statements alarmingly violent. I'd hear, "I couldn't let him live," or "We need a deeper hole, quick." My stomach would twist in knots. One evening, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to her shouting, "Stop screaming, it's over." Then quiet. When I gently tried to rouse her, she jerked upright in bed, eyes wide but unseeing, then flopped back onto the pillow, out cold. The next morning, she had zero recollection. During the day, Talia was still Talia. Sweet, slightly sarcastic, searching job listings, occasionally rummaging in the kitchen for new recipes. No sign of malice or hidden rage. That dissonance felt bizarre. Could it be that she was just reenacting nightmares, Maybe it was a manifestation of stress. Yet the detail, the clarity in her nightly words unnerved me. It wasn't typical sleep talk nonsense. The first time I truly panicked was when she said a name, Damien. She whispered. Damien wouldn't stop fighting, so I used the rope. He's buried off Route 6. I recognized Damien's name from a local missing person case plastered on flyers at the grocery store. A chill coursed through me. I didn't mention it to her in the morning. I couldn't. How would I even phrase it? Hey sis, you specifically named a missing person you strangled off Route 6 in your sleep last night. That sounded insane. So I stayed quiet, but anxiety gnawed at me. Days went by with no further mention of Damien. Then, about a week later, Talia muttered another name that also matched a local missing person, Brianna, a 19-year-old who'd vanished months prior. She gave details like, she was so light I could carry her alone, or I left her behind the orchard near the old fence. The soil was muddy. I found myself wide awake, heart pounding, trying to rationalize. Maybe Talia absorbed these names from the news, or from a local rumor, and her subconscious was spinning twisted dream tales. I resolved to gather proof. A co-worker of mine who's into ghost hunting once told me about how he recorded EVPs with a voice recorder. I used the same tactic. I purchased a small digital recorder, easy to hide. Each night around midnight, I'd quietly place it in Talia's bedroom while she slept, hidden under her nightstand or behind a curtain. Then at dawn, before she woke, I'd retrieve it. The next day, I'd listen with headphones. It was horrifying. She'd speak in a calm monotone, describing acts of violence, referencing real missing people from around the county, detailing disposal methods. She'd say things like, "He tried crawling away, but I pinned him." Or, "The orchard has a sinkhole behind the third row of trees. Perfect to hide her." Her voice was so disturbingly steady, as if reciting instructions or recounting a memory. I recall one particular recording vividly. She mumbled about a woman named Fiona who had vanished from a mall parking lot. The entire city was buzzing about that unsolved disappearance. Talia's whispered monologue said, "Fiona's wrists bled badly, but I covered her mouth so no one heard. She's near the old quarry. I used the rusted barrel as a marker. I nearly dropped the headphones. None of those details were in the news." This was either an insane coincidence or Talia was truly behind it. I debated confronting her with the recordings, but fear paralyzed me. Suppose she actually had done these things. She might lash out if cornered. Suppose I was misinterpreting everything and it was all delusional nightmares. Then I'd destroy our relationship. Instead, I resolved to investigate one site she described. She'd said, "At the quarry by the rusted barrel, bury it deeper." So one weekend, I claimed I was going hiking and drove to the old quarry about 40 minutes away. Sure enough, near the clearing, there was a battered, rusted barrel lying on its side. My chest constricted. After an agonizing search, I discovered freshly disturbed earth behind it. My hands shook as I tested the ground with a small trowel. Not far beneath the surface, I found scraps of cloth that stank of decay. Horrified, I backed away, barely holding down vomit. It was real. She was telling the truth. In a daze, I returned home, every interaction with Talia overshadowed by raw dread. She smiled at me over dinner, asked how my hike went. I forced a grin, mumbling it was fine. That night, I listened again to the night's new recordings. This time, she mentioned my co-worker's cousin, David, who'd gone missing a couple months prior. "He saw my face, so I had no choice," Talia said softly. "Under the big oak near the old train tracks. It's quiet there." My vision spun with shock. Was my sister systematically murdering people across the county? But how had she hidden it so flawlessly? The cops never suspected her. Finally, I decided to gather enough recorded evidence, then approach the police. I stashed backups of the audio files in multiple cloud accounts under password locks, fearful Talia might discover them. But ironically, that same night she grew suspicious. I'd left the recorder in a new spot, and maybe she spotted the red LED or bumped into it. She confronted me just before midnight, surprising me as I was setting the device. "What are you doing in my room?" she asked, eyes narrowed. I tried lying, claiming I lost my phone charger. She stared at me, silent. The tension was suffocating. She let me leave, but I knew something had changed. A day later, Talia cornered me in the living room, phone in hand. "I saw your recorder," she said flatly. "Why are you spying on me?" My voice cracked as I tried to fabricate excuses about her health concerns. She demanded I show her the recordings. Terrified, I tried to deny their existence. She glared with an intensity I'd never seen. Then, unexpectedly, she let out a short laugh. "Don't pry into things that don't concern you," she warned, "or you'll regret it." Then she walked away, leaving me trembling. She didn't explicitly threaten me, but it felt like a direct threat. In the ensuing days, Talia acted strangely possessive of my laptop, my phone, rummaging around as though searching for evidence of what I'd discovered. I started locking my devices. She responded by giving me the cold shoulder, barely speaking to me. The nights remained the same, though, her unconscious confessions growing more explicit. She even uttered lines like, "He tried to blackmail me, so I made sure he disappeared," as if referencing someone who discovered her secret. Could that be a veiled admission she'd done this before, to a friend or ex-partner who found out? My heart hammered at the possibility I was living with someone who might kill me next if she suspected me of betrayal. It all reached a horrifying apex about 3 weeks ago. She said a name in her sleep that meant everything to me: Andy. Andy is my longtime friend, basically a surrogate brother. He'd gone missing a few days prior. I'd frantically called Andy's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Talia murmured in the recorded audio that night. Andy was suspicious, asked too many questions. I ended it near the river bend, weighted him down. I nearly broke down sobbing while listening. Andy's last text to me mentioned he was heading out to meet someone about something important. I never guessed it was Talia, but apparently he suspected her involvement in a friend's disappearance. Now I realized Talia must have lured him out, my best friend, likely killed by my own sister. Rage and grief tore at me, but so did fear. If I tried confronting her physically, I might end up in the same fate. If I contacted the police without bulletproof proof, Talia might vanish or kill me or both. That same morning, I found Talia in the kitchen, humming to herself. She looked at me with mild curiosity, as if testing whether I'd betray any knowledge. My mind screamed at me to do something, but the memory of the orchard, the quarry, the threatened sense of how cunning she was, froze me in place. So I swallowed my heartbreak and forced normalcy. Behind the scenes, I systematically loaded recordings and photos of burial sites onto a secure cloud. I wrote a lengthy statement naming Talia as a suspect, describing the location she mentioned, the evidence of remains I'd quietly verified. I compiled the missing persons references. I even cross-referenced official case details. I planned to walk into a detective's office with it all, or possibly mail it to them if I lacked courage to face them personally. But Talia must have suspected my intentions. Suddenly, she started confining me in indirect ways. "Let's drive to work together," or "My phone's broken, can I borrow yours?" She'd rummage in my room when I was showering, I suspect. At times, I caught glimpses of pure malice in her eyes, as though she was seconds from discarding her facade. She was letting me know, in her subtle way, that she was unstoppable. Finally, I snapped. A few nights ago, I waited until she dozed off, then fled with a suitcase and my laptop. I couldn't risk staying. I left the door unlocked, not caring. I drove hours to a faraway motel where I am now. This is day 3 in this dingy place. I keep the lights low, the curtains drawn. I've typed out everything I can recall, every link between Talia's sleep confessions and local missing persons. My plan was to gather enough nerve to phone the police. But the more I typed, the more horrifying the story became. It's not simply that Talia is killing people, it's that she confesses them in her sleep, as if her subconscious is proud or compelled to recount them. That fact alone might make the cops question my sanity. But it gets worse. Yesterday, I logged into local news sites and discovered another homicide victim found near a deserted barn. A teenage girl with injuries reminiscent of Talia's method. My phone buzzed with texts from colleagues telling me they saw the news. The time window matched Talia's disappearance from the apartment the day I fled. She's still on a spree. She might suspect I have evidence. She could be trying to silence me next. The dread is constant. Sleep is impossible. Every time I close my eyes, I see her calm face in the morning, frying eggs, chatting about errands, while at night she's reciting murder details. I can't reconcile these two versions of her, but I have to accept it's real, so now I write this final testament, pushing it to an online forum or cloud, in case Talia finds me before I can hand it to the authorities. Maybe someone out there will read it, believe it, and forward it to the right detective. Because Talia is no mere imagination. She's my sister, a cold-blooded murderer who confides in her sleep. She must be stopped. If I vanish or turn up dead, you'll know it was her covering her tracks. She's unstoppable, unbelievably cunning. A side of me almost pities her, wonders if she's possessed by some mania. But the many bodies in shallow graves overshadow that pity. She's a monster, and I can't let her roam free. I hear footsteps outside. My heart leaps into my throat. Did she track me here? I keep a battered gun on the nightstand, uncertain I can pull the trigger if she bursts in. She is, after all, my sister. But after everything, if it comes down to her or me, I have to choose me. I recall the orchard site, the decaying remains, the stench. That could be my fate, left to rot with only a half-buried corpse for company. I refuse, not if I can help it. So I must finish uploading this. Then, maybe I'll try calling the state detective. Wish me luck. That's the story. My sister told me she killed someone while she was asleep. And not just someone, but many. Her unconscious words detail real murders, describing each location with horrifying precision. I verified a few. They all check out. She's behind multiple disappearances, from longtime friend to random strangers. She outmaneuvered me at every turn. Don't be fooled if you meet her. She's warm, witty, heartbreakingly normal in the sunlight. But once night falls, her sleeping mind reveals the truth. If anyone else out there has a sibling or a partner who confesses crimes in their sleep, don't wait. Don't rationalize. Don't let fear or love paralyze you. Because if you do, you might share my torment, living day by day in mortal dread of the one you used to trust above all others. Pray for me. She's out there, possibly at this very motel, perhaps just waiting for the right moment. If I don't appear again, remember my name is Evan, and my sister is Talia. She's about 5'5", athletic build, with short dark hair and a small tattoo of a crescent moon on her left wrist. If the authorities question her, she might smile sweetly and pretend ignorance. Don't buy it. She's lethal. Let my nightmares serve as your warning. God help me if she finds me before morning.